My next guest, Kute Blackson, is a beloved transformational teacher and inspirational speaker. He's guided me and so many others through his fresh, bold look at spiritual awareness. His unique lineage lay the foundation for his approach to breaking down barriers and unlocking an individual's true gifts and greatness with his cutting edge transformational teachings to activate us body, mind, and soul, and catapult manifesting the life we were born for. And I am so very pleased to have him here with us today. It is my honor. The warmest welcome to you, Kute.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. I told you right before we started the podcast, I was kind of fangirling out. Because I just love what you stand for, and I love where you came from. And I want to start there. I want to start with your multicultural upbringing. You're the child of a Japanese mother, but you were born in Ghana, West Africa, where your dad is from, but you were brought up in England. Now, it sounds very basic structure. Okay, I can handle that. But we got to talk a bit about your family. Your dad was known as the miracle man of Africa. He's a healer and a preacher, a pastor, and we're going to get to that. But first, I want to talk about your mom and your dad together and how they wound up marrying, and they had a knowing about each other.
Wow, if you want to hear the story, let me share the story.
Sure, I want you to share the story, but I want you to talk because early on, your story is out there and I want people to listen to this, but the knowing part about finding each other, I think listen to your work, it comes through, it came through later. And I want to
look, my father, my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that a man walked on, which is my father, and wipes it on her face and stands up. The stuff that you hear about, you wonder, is it real? Especially in today's age in social media. And so this was before social media. I just grew up seeing this stuff every day and didn't think anything special of it. I thought everyone had this experience. And so I was like, well, yeah, someone stood up out of a wheelchair, someone threw away crutches, someone's cured of cancer. It's just normal until people started questioning my sanity, but then realized, wow, this is real. And so my father was an interesting character, and so he built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, had a huge church in London. And so what happened in terms of how they met, which I think is a foundation for my life and just so much of my essence, was when my father was about 14 years old, 15 years old, in Ghana, West Africa. This is way back, probably in like the early 50s.
Right.
He had a sort of spiritual experience and started healing people. Before you knew it, thousands of people came to this teenager, started healing them, and he started a church, and the thing exploded. And maybe at his height had millions of devotees. So he got married, had 3 children. First wife dies, and when he was about 8 years old, he would receive visions of a Japanese guru, a Japanese spiritual teacher, who would come to him in his dreams and teach him about life, kind of like a Yogananda, but Japanese. And so this guy would teach him about the mysteries of life, the purpose of life, the nature of the cosmos. This man was guiding him throughout his life, even though he had these churches and was this figure. When my father was about 38, 39, maybe let's say 40 years old, he was in a store in Ghana, West Africa, in the 70s, and a book falls off the shelf. You hear about serendipity. He sees the back of the book. He sees the face of this Japanese guru. He's shocked because he didn't know that this guy was real. And so he writes to this man, no emails at the time, says, "You've been coming to me in my dreams since I was 8. This is really crazy because I didn't know you were a real person." The man sends his son-in-law, basically his son, to Ghana to meet my father. The son-in-law is so blown away, he invites my father to come meet the guru and go on a stadium lecture tour around Japan. Okay, big deal. My father says yes. Before the man goes back, my father says, "Look, I believe in the power of prayer. I'm looking for a wife. Would you please pray for me because I want to find my soulmate?" The man goes back. The son-in-law gives a talk in Japan, makes the announcement to his people that this guy, this miracle man from Ghana, is going to be coming to Japan with the guru on a lecture tour. Here are the dates. My mother, her parents, grew up in this spiritual organization. This Japanese guru were her parents' teacher, her parents' spiritual teacher. So my mother was about 28 at the time. She's in the audience. She's sitting there. She has said a prayer to God, and her prayer before this was, "God, I will marry anyone you tell me to marry." just make it clear that this is my husband. And, in Japan, if you're not married, at least at that time, by 24, 23, 22, 25, you're pushing 26, 27, 28, you're getting old. She's 28, so she's really getting old.
Right. They're looking like
She
this is the
said,
end of
God,
the
I
line.
will marry anyone you tell me to marry. Just make it clear that this is my husband. She's in the audience that day. She heard about my father. She felt a chill in her body. She felt like she heard this voice that said, this is your husband. She somehow gets my father's address, writes to my father. My father's in London. The letter gets routed to him. My father is meditating in London on his way to Japan. In his meditation, he receives a message. Your wife will come to you tomorrow. He opens the mailbox. There is a letter from my mother. Now he doesn't know her. He opens a letter. There's nothing romantic in it. Just look forward to seeing you speak. That's it. He says, this is my wife. He writes to my mother. He says, basically, would you be open to moving to Ghana? That's the first letter. Would you be open to moving? Not quite a proposal, but kind of, in that direction. She writes back now, bear in mind, my mother speaks no English. My father speaks no Japanese. This is through translation and my aunt translating, my mother's sister. My mother writes back and says, if it's God's will. My father writes back and says, it's God's will, marry me. They agreed to get married. They have not seen each other. They've not spoken on the phone. There's no internet. There's no Facebook to stalk each other, social media, nothing. Yes, I'll marry you. They agreed to get married. My father goes to Japan, goes on this lecture tour, meets my mother. Last thing I'll say is, they just have this knowing. She can't speak English. She's like, are you sure? She's like, yes, yes. Okay, they agree. My father has no money for a Japanese wedding. And by Japanese standards, my father is not rich by Japanese standards.
Mhm.
And so in the 70s, you can't go to Japan and not throw down a big wedding. You're a foreigner marrying a Japanese woman. You have to come with respect. My
Right.
father has no money. He prays. God says, just chill, relax. Okay. All right. Trust the universe. And 6 weeks later, he goes to his mailbox in Japan. There is an envelope. He opens the envelope. It's anonymous, no name, nothing. All that's in there is $7,000 in US cash in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And it
That's a lot
says,
of money.
this is for your wedding, nothing else. He
Wow.
didn't know who it's from. They got married, moved to basically Ghana. Literally, my mother moved to Ghana and had me a few years later. And so that's how they met, just trusting and surrendering to the deeper knowing of their soul. And I'm a believer that if you're honest and you're true and you're in integrity with your soul and you follow it, you will always be led in the right place in the right time with the right people doing the right thing, even though the path that you take may not be the one that you expect. So that's how
Right.
they.
And that's beautiful. And I think, in that nutshell, we get in the way of that path all the time for ourselves. You know what I
Yes,
mean? And
yes.
the knowing it's, we're dealing with spiritual people who had already had a connection to God. And so they were already open to receiving these messages. And I think everybody, I know you think everybody is able, and if they're available, can be open to receiving these messages. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story, and it's an incredible story, and there are no coincidences. And I love that because everything happens for a reason. And I want to get to your dad, and I do get to him a little bit later in the podcast, but I want to talk a little bit about you. Being the
Yeah.
son of your father was really the perfect preparation for your life, even though you didn't follow in his footsteps, which was, we can all relate to this. Our parents want us to follow in their footsteps, and your dad had you speaking in his churches at a very, very young age.
Mhm.
But you had to have a hard conversation at one point with your dad and say, I have my own path, and it may not be the church's, but I want to talk a little bit about what you saw through your father's actions and how you were able, because I know it came through some steps, but how what you watched, how did you then act on that in your own right for yourself? What worked for you, Kute? Healing and seeing these unbelievable miracles that your father, and we'll talk about what he says about it, that he really wasn't in control of, but you wanted something else. You wanted something different for yourself. Can we
Yeah, look,
talk about that?
when I was age 8, I was thrown into my father's audience and told to speak.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a script. I just stood up and started speaking. And I remember that something just started to come through me that I could not explain. It just happened. And the audience were in tears. And that began my speaking career, so to speak. And that began my relationship with something deeper than myself. So from age 8 to 18, I became very obsessed with trying to understand what happened. What was that? What's going on? What's my purpose? Why am I here? I'd go to school on Monday through Friday and just would see my kids just being kids, and not that I couldn't relate, but I just felt like there was something more than going to school, waking up, going to work, making money, having a job, and then dying. And so I began at a very young age, I began reading all of these self-help books, spiritual books in my father's office. Everyone from the Eastern mystics, from Krishnamurti to Osho to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi to, Louise Hay to Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra to Blavatsky and Theosophy Society. And so I became obsessed with just trying to understand life. So fast forward at age 14, I was ordained as a minister. And I was speaking, once a month, every few months. My father would say, boom, speak, just like that. No preparation, just like speak. I was like, terrified, until I got onto the stage and something opened up. And so when I was 14, I'll never forget the day my father just suddenly announces my son is taking over. My son is my successor. And something didn't feel, everybody was happy,
Yeah.
but he never discussed it with me. And we
Mhm.
never talked about this. And I was kind of in shock because at least have a conversation. And
Right.
so I just knew in my heart, because we all have a knowing. There's a
Mhm.
part of us deep down that knows everything. We might want to deny that knowing. Something feels off. Don't do this deal. I'm not sure about this person that I'm dating. We all have a knowing, but we sometimes pretend. We sometimes pretend because there's kind of payoffs that we have for not aligning with the truth. We're afraid that if we tell the truth, that it won't work, that we'll have to leave, that we won't get what we want. And so we often play this, shall we say, this game of, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm confused. No, we're not. We know deep down, but we're often afraid of the consequences of
Yeah.
if I truly own my knowing, then what? And so when I was 14, I knew that this was not my path. I just knew. Everything seemed to make sense. Yeah, take over your father's thing, take it to the next level. You're the man. Your life is set. But something didn't feel right. And I went along with it. I was just looking, interestingly, the other day, I might post these on social media. I was looking at my ordination ceremony when I was
Oh,
14, all dressed up in meditation. And I wanted to serve humanity in some way and do, in quote, like God's work. I wanted to be a servant to the universe and just inspire people. But if I was honest, I knew that this was not my path, but I was too afraid
mm,
to speak my truth and tell my father. My fear was if I spoke my truth, I'd be outcast. He wouldn't love me anymore. I would lose the relationship. Nobody would love me. I'd be alone for the rest of my life. And so, like many of us, I allowed fear to hijack my freedom. I allowed fear to stop me from speaking my truth. And for 4 years, I tried to fit myself into a box of becoming who I thought I needed to be in order to get love, validation, approval. And I tried to
yeah.
rationalize and negotiate. And what so many of us do is we rationalize, we analyze, we live in denial, or we negotiate. Well, maybe if I, don't do this, and maybe if I change myself, and maybe if I change my hair, maybe if I, do it this way, then I can fit my. It never works. And so when I was 18, I was faced with a decision. I chose not to go to university, which shocked everybody. But I felt a calling in my soul that was so undeniable that to deny it would have been equivalent to death. I
Mm,
felt my soul guiding me to go to America. You might say, well, why America? Specifically LA, Los Angeles, because all of the self-help authors I read lived in freaking LA. Tony Robbins, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay. So for me, it was going to be either I go to India or I go to LA. And for me, LA was the spiritual mecca at the time. And so I felt this calling in my soul that said, go to LA. And sometimes what your soul will guide you to do will not make any sense to your mind, will not make any sense to your logic. But as I said, if you listen to it, you'll be guided in ways that you cannot even imagine right now. with the logic of your ego or conscious mind. And so I said, yeah, I'm leaving. And that's when I had the conversation with my father, which was freaking terrifying and, felt like a death. It felt like I was just committing suicide and jumping off a bridge with no parachute, and it was the scariest conversation in my life. But that was the moment that I took responsibility for my life and my destiny and altered my destiny and really brought myself into alignment, I would say, with my highest destiny. And I had the conversation. After the conversation, I was depressed because I felt like, what did I do? I felt like I let my father down. You'd think I would be happy. I was heartbroken. Like I broke my father's heart and I'm a bad son. And like, what the hell do I do now? No money, no college degree, no contacts in the US. And how the hell do I even get there? I didn't know
Love
anyone
it.
in the US. And so,
Right.
long story short, once I had that conversation and I took action on my knowing, that's another thing. Many times we have the knowing, but we don't act on it.
Right.
Because often the intuitive knowing and guidance that we're given does not make sense to your logic or your conscious mind because it's coming from a deeper dimension of your own being. It's not meant to make sense to your logic or your mind. But the ways we block ourselves is, oh, it doesn't make sense. It's confusing. So the ego kicks in and tries to analyze it, understand it, because it's not familiar. It's not the comfort zone. It forces you beyond who you are and beyond what you know. And because we start overanalyzing it and trying to understand it, we stop, we block ourselves, and we just sit there. We don't take action. And so I had the conversation. I left everything behind, terrified. And one day I said to God, God, life, universe, I know I'm following my calling. I feel crazy. I feel I'm crazy. My father is not speaking to me. What do I do now? I kid you not, within days, someone hands me a magazine called The Economist. I felt chills. We got to follow those clues. I felt chills. I look in the back and I see that there's an ad. The American government's giving away 55,000 green cards in the green card lottery, the diversity program. And I just felt this calling, enter this thing, you're going to win. Long story short, I entered the green card lottery. I end up winning a freaking green card. And, 18 years old, come to LA with $800 in my pocket and two suitcases. One suitcase full of books and one suitcase full of books. I'm talking all the self-help books that I could probably 150 self-help books I brought with me, one suitcase full of clothes. And that began my journey in America.
Now you can just bring your iPhone with all those books, but that's what
Yeah,
you had to
bring my
do back
Kindle.
then. Exactly, exactly. And the thing that you say about that is we are trained to actually, I think we're trained. I certainly can say I don't know what it was like growing up in London, but in America, you're trained to sit in line, get in line, do these things like, follow this path, graduate high school, go to college, find a partner, get married, this white picket fence, 2.5 dogs, 2.5 kids, this type of idea. And so a lot of times I think we don't listen to what's happening inside the soul. And like you mentioned, the ego really gets in the way. And I want to bring that up because you got to America and you had no connections, no prospects, but you had big dreams and you had a knowing in your soul. And what you found in America, what you met in America, and it's a good place to meet it, is you met your ego. We met your ego. And I want to talk about that, how you learned what you call the inside out approach. And this is your own method and how meeting your ego, tell our listeners a little bit about meeting your ego is who you met in America. You didn't get to meet some of the people you wanted to meet. Tell a little bit about that story and how that liberated you.
Yeah, when I came to America, I didn't come for fame or fortune. I came because there was a calling. And what happened was I was in Hollywood, right? But I didn't want to be an actor or anything. And yet I started to like watch Oprah and like, oh, wow. The question was, wow, maybe basically after a few years, maybe I could inspire people like that. Maybe I could create a talk show. So I got this idea to create a talk show, a new generation talk show for the sort of young people, 18 to 35-year-old folks, but an inspirational talk show, kind of like what you see with podcasts now, right? It was like, let me do a show and not just talk about what did you eat today and frivolous stuff. Let me talk about like, hey, What
Real people,
inspires
real
you?
life.
What
Yeah.
motivates you? What, the real questions that have become prevalent on podcasts today. And so I started pitching this show. Long story short, again, I literally got so obsessed. I went broke in the process. Not that I had a lot of money anyway, but I basically became homeless, no money, sleeping on friends' couches for 2 years, full time pitching my show. And
Mhm.
what I ended up doing was finding Steven Spielberg in a park, Richard Branson on the street, head of every agency, William Morris and CIA agents, I would just track them down everywhere, just pitched my show, um, was offered a show, Merv Griffin, and different folks. I mean, there's stories after stories. And so basically what ended up happening was after rejection after rejection after rejection, I met these two managers. They managed Michael Jackson, Jennifer Lopez, Dolly Parton, Backstreet Boys, DiCaprio, Martin Lawrence. I mean, the list went on, right? There's a few others, Barbara Streisand. There's a few others in there. And I met with them. And as I sat with them, I pitched them my idea. I'm like 19 years old. Here's my idea. They looked at each other and they're like, this is crazy, but we think you're going to be huge. We think you are going to be like a star. So we want to manage you. We don't know who the hell you are, but we want to manage you. Here's a contract. Come back tomorrow, and we're gonna go into Fox. They just started breaking down all these names I had no idea of. So I went
Right.
home that day, and you got to understand, my ego was I was so attached to
Yeah.
the idea of the show and me being the show personality, media person that I could not imagine any other alternative. Talk about attachment and identity. And so I went home with the contract, meditated on it, and all I heard was the word no, like no. And I know that that same alignment is what guided me to come to America, enter the green card. It guided me throughout my whole life. When I don't listen to it, things don't go well. And this
Yeah.
was the same voice that said, enter the green card lottery, was saying, don't sign with these guys. And it made no sense. And I was wrestling with it and struggling with it and felt depressed again. But I knew that this voice was always right. So the next day, I ended up calling these managers and said, I'm not signing with you. They were shocked.
Yes.
I said, no, we moved on. And that's what took me into initially a depression,
Yeah.
because sometimes when you don't get what you want because you're so attached to it and you think what you want is what you want, but it's really not. And you're not able to see or make sense of why things don't work out in the moment because the ego can't make sense of things because the ego is locked in a very small prison of identity. It doesn't see the whole picture of life and how all the dots connect together and how that breakup is actually leading you deeper into yourself, which is leading you closer to your soulmate, and how that being fired is actually pushing you in the direction of your true purpose. We can't see it in the moment. And so in that moment, I couldn't see the light, my head, the left from the right. All I felt like was I was in darkness. And that was the moment where I would say I broke down and my ego started to break down because I felt like I tried so hard to make this dream happen and it wasn't happening.
Right.
And I reached the end of my ego's capacity to make my life happen. I did everything. People say, no, I really did everything. And they did like two things. I'm like, that's not
Right.
everything. I
Right.
tracked down Steven Spielberg in a park. I tracked down, David Geffen, Richard Branson, Arnon Milchan. I mean, I could go down the list of on the street. I did everything. Got laughed at, got rejected. And so I felt like I reached the end of my own ego's human capacity to manifest my life. And I just threw my hands up and said, God, I don't know what you want with me anymore. I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore with my life, but I surrender and just guide me. What am I supposed to do? And I was driving from LA to San Diego and I said that prayer again, like, what am I supposed to show me? And I saw this thing, I heard this voice that said, walk the Camino. is a 900-kilometer spiritual trek in northern Spain,
Yes, the El
Camino de
Camino de
Santiago. Yeah.
Santiago.
And I was like, well, I mean, like, give me some other guidance, because sometimes when we're given guidance, right, we ask for guidance, we're given guidance, we don't want to listen to the guidance because the guidance is not what we want to hear. But
Right.
we must be willing to be obedient to the guidance that we're given, because it will often not be what we want to hear. And so what I found is sometimes not getting what you thought, what you wanted, or what you thought you wanted is grace. Because
Yeah.
you might achieve everything that you thought you wanted, only to realize that what you thought you wanted was not what you really wanted. It was just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I walked the Camino and I went to India, and I just went through my own unraveling process of who I thought I was. And I had to deal with so much of my pain and my hurt and my childhood feelings of rejection and being abandoned by my father, and him not seeing me and not feeling loved and not feeling worthy and not feeling enough, that I didn't even know that I had, that I was covering up with my ego. The ego is the perceived illusory sense of what we believe ourselves to be based on past memories, experiences, belief systems, ideas that we hold on to and identify with as this is me.
Mhm.
And we hold on to this version of ourselves as a form of self-protection. And the ego's job is to protect you from getting hurt again. Like, I'll never be hurt like I was hurt when I was 5, and my dad left, and my mom wasn't there, and my needs weren't met. And so now I close my heart, shut my feelings down. I will never feel that way again. So now we go through life closed. Our heart is closed. And then we get older and we get it, we try to, like, maybe we're 20 and 30, and we end up being alone, wondering, like, why can I not have a relationship? Why do I keep
In
sabotaging my
the wrong
relationship?
relationship, or
Yes,
bitter.
exactly. And we're not even sure why, because we've developed all sorts of strategic defense mechanisms that become a part of our ego identity that we hold on to, well-meaning, but very limited. And
Yes.
so there were so many defense mechanisms that I had created, that I did not know I had created, to just deal with some of the pain around my childhood. That, overall, I had a decent childhood. I wasn't beaten. My dad wasn't abusive, but there were many things I didn't get, in many ways that I didn't feel loved, that I was not acknowledging. And this was just defense mechanisms. And so the ego is sneaky, because the ego doesn't want to change. The ego is well-meaning, but living a life in the ego will limit you.
Yes.
And so I had to go through a breakdown process. And I think this is many times why we have to, as human beings. It doesn't have to, but we often have to, because we're holding on to our sense of self. We have to go through challenging experiences, painful experiences, difficulties, because this is life's way of breaking us open like a coconut, cracking the ego shell open to force us to let go, so that we can embrace more of life, more of our purpose, more alignment, more authenticity. And so that took me to the Camino, which is a whole story, and that took me to India, which is where I really went deep into my dismantling of my own ego, and found a deeper sense of my truth, a deeper sense of who I am, beyond my physical self, beyond my identity, beyond my stories. And in that, there was such a sense of freedom that I felt within, that I came back to, because I left on this journey to the Camino and then to India, and I sold everything, broke up with my girlfriend, shaved my head, took a backpack, a pair of clothes, and I said, I'm not coming back to America until I find answers for myself.
Mhm.
And I was prepared to not come back. And it was on that journey in India that something opened for me that just was so freeing and expansive, that I came back, and I felt so free. I had nothing. I didn't have a girlfriend, a house, an apartment, like barely any money. And my sense of inner freedom was no longer dependent
On those
on
things.
on circumstances. And for me, that's real freedom.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. There's something that I always say, because in my work, I always ask myself, like, and as a parent, I want to teach my children, to not have to go through these things. But I've learned that as a child, you need the ego, but as
Yes.
an
Yes.
adult, you need to learn to witness the ego.
Yeah. The ego isn't bad.
No.
Even as adults, we all have an ego. I have an ego. You have an ego.
Sure.
Dalai Lama has an ego. The ego, what I would say is the ego is not even real. It is a process of
Yeah.
identification. And the degree to which you are identified with your beliefs, your thoughts, your prejudices, your ideas, your memories, your pain, the degree to which you're identified with those things is the degree to which you are in ego. But ego is like a bicycle is a thing. Ego is pedaling is a process. Ego
Yes.
is a process of identification. So we
Yes.
all have an ego is just a vehicle that consciousness uses to navigate this human experience. So
Right.
if you were to like call out, hey, Dalai Lama, he would turn around and say, yes, you need an ego to do that. But
Yes.
if we're attached to our identity, then we're not free. And that's when the ego limits us. And so we have to learn, I would say, to cultivate a relationship with the ego versus be so attached to the ego where we believe our stories, I'm not enough, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable. And we so believe those stories about ourselves.
Oh my gosh, don't we ever? I want to talk a little bit about the process of breaking free. The inside out approach, liberated living. You said you came home liberated, free. And there was a lot of things. We're going to get into your books because you guys have to read his books. And I'm going to reference some of the things that you talk about in your book. But when you were on the El Camino, you had a pattern that you were going through with girls, and you kept finding yourself with girls that were very jealous.
Mhm.
And you met a guy on the trail, again, divine intervention. You meet this guy on the trail, and he challenges you about that. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I want people to understand, or maybe you can even break it down in more scientific ways, but this process of breaking free, it's not a one and done. That's why I say children need the ego and adults need to learn to witness the ego, what it's saying, what is it, how am I reacting in my ego, or am I reacting from my soul and my truth? So you talk about the Santiago Trail, the El Camino Trail, and you talk about this surrender. And this guy pointed out to you that you were actually attracting these people because you
Yeah.
wanted these people in your life. You
Yeah.
wanted jealous women. And that sounded crazy. You're like, I don't want jealous women in my life. What are you talking about? Can you lead us into how that opened you up and how that was part of your process before you even got to India, and then what happened in India, and bring us into.
Yeah, look, yeah, I kept attracting jealous women, one in particular who I thought was the love of my life at the time. And I was with her for 4 years, and we would go out and I would just breathe around another woman or just kind of look in a direction, because we're just human beings. We can't look at the floor. And she would just lose it. And we wouldn't speak. It would lead to a big fight. It was great. When I look back, I'm like, wow, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I was 21 and I was in love and I was like, I'll do anything to make this work. And, many times in relationships, we attract the the experiences that correspond to things in our childhood that we have not yet resolved and healed.
Right.
And they will show up in the form of the person. And we will think it's love, but it's not love. It's just the energetic similarity and familiarity to how we were conditioned to make love mean.
Mhm.
Because every single thing that happens is actually stored in our nervous system. From the moment we're born, dad leaves, dad is not available, dad's not. So what starts happening is, I love dad. So it's like love and emotional unavailability, love and leaving, love and abandon start getting fused together. And we start identifying the two together. That gets imprinted in our nervous system. Mom is mean, mom is abusive, mom talks down to me. That pain, like love is pain, gets fused in your nervous system. And all of a sudden, it's what you think love is. Love is painful. So maybe you go out into life and you meet a guy that's really nice. It's like, I'm not attracted to him. This doesn't feel, no, he's not my type because he's not treating you like crap, right? But the guy that treats you like crap is like, I feel the spark. I feel the
Have it.
energy. He's my type. Yeah, it feels so. He's the one. I feel so close. Yes, you feel so close and familiar because energetically it's your mom, right? And so that gets wired. So we're often drawn to the similar frequency and energy of what we were imprinted and conditioned as. And so, with that said, without going into my whole story, I kept attracting jealous women. for different reasons connected to my mother and what have you. And I couldn't figure it out. And there was one that was in particularly jealous for 4 years. Then I got into another relationship, jealous, another relationship, jealous. And finally, I'm just done with women. These women are crazy. Women are crazy. It's all the women that are crazy. It's not me. It's the women. It's the women. And that's when he challenged me and said, well, you are the common denominator and you keep attracting these women that are jealous. So what is it about you? And why do you actually want it? And it pissed me off, his question. I'm like, F you, screw you, da. Because sometimes the truth hurts and the
Yeah.
truth stings. And when we get close to the truth, the ego starts protecting itself, right? And so when I took a step back and I reflected on what he was saying, I began to realize that, you know what? If I'm honest, there is a part of me that wants to be with a jealous woman. Wow. Why? Because because there's a part of me that feels insecure because I was abandoned or felt abandoned by my dad, felt like nobody was there, felt like nobody was there for me, felt, and all of these insecurities and pain and wounds that I was carrying, there was a part of me that felt like, this wasn't conscious, by the way, that if I'm with a jealous woman, as much as I hate it on one level, she's certainly never going to leave me.
Right.
she,
She wants to
she,
know where you are every second of every
every
day.
second, every moment, and basically she would strangle me before leaving me. And so I had to admit, like, oh, there's an insecure, inadequate part of me that actually wants that. As much as I say I don't, and as painful as it is, deep down, I want that because I'll feel a false, illusory, dysfunctional security that comes from that attachment, her attachment to me. And when I really understood that, then it was no longer about the other person. That forced me to heal myself and free myself. And that's when the relationship shifted and we broke up. And that's when my relationship with women shifted, because I was able to heal the pain and the wounds inside of me. And I just began to become increasingly more attracted to something else, a different energy, a healthier energy. When we're children, just so I can kind of maybe give people a sense of how we're all conditioned so people can so as you're listening, you can all think about how you're conditioned. We're born free as children. You look at a child, they're free. They're just full of the divine, full of light. They'll jump on a table. They don't know what's right and wrong. They don't know that they can't jump off that table and fly. They don't know until we start telling them, you can't do that. Oh, that's not good. That's bad. So as children, I have a 21-month-old son, and he dances like he doesn't care. He's not Bruno Mars. He'll sing, he'll dance. He's free. Right.
Yeah.
But if I told him, that's stupid. You can't dance. What is that? If I did every day, he would start to doubt himself and feel shy and be insecure. And I said, if I were to say to him, be quiet, kids shouldn't be seen, he would start hiding, which I don't. But this is how the conditioning process starts.
This
So as
happens.
children, we are these free beings, divine expressions, pure light. We meet our parents. God bless them, my parents. They're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their conditioning and their parents and their dysfunction and their wounds. Maybe dad is crazy. Maybe mom is an alcoholic. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe they're good people, but they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs. So two things happen in terms of the conditioning process that I think we can all relate to. The first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies as a coping mechanism to deal with our environment because we're very sensitive as children, all sorts of coping strategies to shut down, disconnect, and not feel. I don't want to feel how crazy it is that mom and dad are fighting. I don't want to feel the pain of dad is an alcoholic and he's screaming. I don't want to feel the pain of my emotional needs aren't met. And I'm just sitting here hanging and no one's meeting them. And that's too painful. And I'm tired of being disappointed and that hurts. So I'll just shut down, disconnect, not feel. I don't need anybody. Layers and layers and layers and layers of the unprocessed pain that we have throughout our childhood builds up, ends up covering up our true light, our true
Yes.
essence, our true nature. And before you know it, who we really are can't get out. And then we develop all sorts of roles and masks and personas. Who do I need to be in order for me to be loved? So we look at our dad, we look at our mom. Oh, they laughed at that. Let me do more of that. Oh, they give me a bad look. Oh, they spanked my sister. Oh, let me do less of that. So slowly, oh, got all A's. I get validated, right? Don't study, I don't. So slowly, we start to develop a role, a mask, a persona of who we think we need to be in order to get love, validation, approval. As a child, growing up in my father's church, it was like the good boy,
Yeah.
the preacher's kid,
I just thought, yeah.
the responsible one for everyone. He's such a responsible kid. He takes care of everyone. Oh my God, he's amazing. He never causes any trouble. Doesn't ever feel sad. He's always happy, which is good on one level, but over time it gets reinforced. And
Not
now
seen.
I have to develop a role, a mask, a persona, an identity, a way of being where I have to shut down parts of myself so that no one sees them. I can't be mad. I can't be sad. I can't be just human because
Right.
then I don't get love. And so many, all of us, we develop these roles, masks and personas, and we end up identifying with them, and we end up thinking that who we become is who we are. And
Yes.
we end up saying, no, no, I'm just shy. This is just who I am. And we never really question. So we have how we start to break through is we must start by questioning ourselves. Who am I really? Is who I am who I really am, or is it just who I've been conditioned to be? Do I really believe what I believe, or is it just what I've been conditioned to believe? Right. And so we have to have the courage to question. But again, the ego is afraid of questioning because the ego is afraid of change, because change and surrender for the ego feel like a death.
Yeah.
And this is why we resist change and we hold on and we avoid change and we live in denial and we lie to ourselves. And so, number one is to question. Number two is to start becoming aware of, oh, all the ways that you're conditioned. Number three is you have to be willing to start telling yourself the truth. Like, oh, this is the truth about what I feel. Ah, this is the truth about who I am. And the truth might be as simple as, I'm not happy. The truth might be as simple as, I'm not in love with my wife. The truth might be as simple as, I hate my job. Because one of the ways we keep ourselves stuck and the ego reinforced is we lie to ourselves. I'm fine. I'm okay, which is what we did when we were young. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm good. Right. I'll be who I think you want me to be is another way we lie to ourselves. And that reinforces our own ego identity structure. So we have to be willing to tell the truth to ourselves. So I'd invite people to sit with what lies are you telling yourself? Just sit with that. What lies are you telling yourself? What are you pretending to not know? What is it costing you? You don't even have to make changes in your life, but just start telling yourself the truth. Take the pressure of having to, does that mean I have to end my relationship? No, just tell the truth. Feel what comes up because one of the ways we've learned to keep ourselves stuck, that we will keep ourselves stuck from breaking through, is not allowing ourselves to feel the feelings that we have learned to suppress. And that keeps us stuck even more. So we have to be willing to tell and speak the truth.
The truth will set you free. I mean,
Yes.
that's no joke, right? I think it's a really good analogy that you use, and I want you to share it now. Your story of I love the story of amnesia. If you're in a hospital,
Oh,
tell that. That one, it actually brings.
well, yeah, we think that we are this person. I'm shy, I'm this, I'm that, I'm I'm good, I'm bad, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, I'm independent. All of we just go down the list, right?
Right.
This is good, this is that, and because of that, I'm good, right? I'm a man, and everything that means I'm a woman, everything that means I'm black, everything that means I'm Asian, everything that means I'm white. So we have all of these stories that we've attached to. But the truth is, if you slipped and fell and lost your memory right now, and you woke up in a hospital, like you went unconscious, let's say, you woke up in a hospital room, and the doctor walked in, and he said, "My name's Doctor So and So." You're like, "Okay." The doctor says, we have good news and bad news. Good news is your life. Bad news is you've lost your memory forever. It's gone. Like, what would you say? I mean, probably we wouldn't believe it at first. Like, and he says, go ahead, try, tell me your name. You imagine, right, folks? You draw a blank and you think through your memory and you realize you actually remember nothing. The doctor's telling the truth, like, oh shoot, like it's gone. In that moment, who are you? We've become so sure about who we think that we are. I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm not enough. I'm unworthy. I'm not good at math. I'm not creative. I'm not this person. I'm not that. I can achieve this, but not that. We've become so sure about who we think we are that we've limited ourselves in ways that we end up playing small. In that moment, the doctor would tell you, okay, your name is Mugu Mugu. Let's just be like, your name is Mugu Mugu. Like, okay. You would say, okay. And you are the religion of the monkeys. Monkeys have a very sacred religion, mystical monkey, deep spiritual truths of the monkeys, and they chant a special chant that opens their soul up to the universe. And, the doctor starts telling you all this nonsense, right? But you're like,
Wow.
okay, wow, all right. I'm a monkeyist.
The monkey
Okay.
guy, yeah.
I'm a monkey person, right? I'm a monkeyism, right? And so here's what we have to realize. Everything about yourself, you have been told.
Yeah.
You've been told you're a man and what that means, or a woman. You've been told what religion you are. Because if you were born in Afghanistan, you'd be a different freaking religion.
Right.
If you've been told by the media, by education system, by school, by your teachers, what to believe. And in so many ways, we have been programmed and conditioned by society and our environment and those around us, right? And then certain events happen. And because we're young, not fully formed, not particularly mature yet, with a limited interpretation and capacity, we end up making an interpretation of what that event means. Mom left when I was 8, so that must mean I am unlovable because she left. Mm-hmm. And she would not have left if I was lovable. We make up a meaning about certain events that may not be the actual reality of the situation. And now we hold on to that meaning as though it's true. And we end up living inside of a prison of that meaning.
Yeah.
We are not free. Mom leaving doesn't mean we're not enough. Mom left. But there's many other things it could have meant. Could have meant mom was crazy. Could have meant mom loved us, so she wanted to remove herself. But we make it mean like I am not enough. Then we live inside of that hypnosis. We live inside of that illusory belief system, and that belief then ends up becoming our reality because we seek out situations and experiences to reinforce that belief and identity. So many of us were living inside of limited prisons of our mind that we think is fact and we think is true, but we're living a fiction. You made up a story. I'm not enough. It's just a story. It's not necessarily the reality. So if you were in that hospital room, you've been told your name is Mugu Mugu. You've been told that you are a monkeyist. Maybe, maybe they'll say, yeah, the hospital, we are in Mars. You wouldn't know. You've been told this is Mars. Well, what makes this Las Vegas? Someone made it up, right? And so everything about ourselves, we have been told. But in that hospital room, what is the only thing that you could know for sure? The only thing that we could know for sure. We would look around. We wouldn't know what our name is. We wouldn't even know where we are. We wouldn't even know that this is what we call a hospital. But the only thing that we could know for sure is, okay, I exist. Okay, I am here. I am, oh, I am. Okay, I am. I am that I am, right? This is what it says in one of the spiritual texts. I am that I am. It doesn't say I am. It's just I am that I am.
I am.
The I amness of things. And so we've attached so many things to I am that becomes our identity, and we limit ourselves. I'm not enough is a story. This is a story. That is a story. So when you realize that that's not who you really are, that's just identification. That's just story. That's just ego. Then you can start learning how to say, okay, whatever I let go of, whatever I release, whatever I surrender is not who I really am. It's just an illusion. And the more we can let go of the illusions, the more we can reconnect with our true essence, our true selves again, the freer we are. Because then all possibilities open up. It's not like I'm good at math and I'm not very good at art. I am.
Right.
That's it. And then you can find out. So, people often talk about in self-help, like you have to know who you are. Okay, on one level, but let's flip it. You have to be willing to not know who you are so that you can find out who you really are
Right.
from the inside, not just what people have told you or what, some guru has told you or what Buddha told you or Deepak told you. I mean, it's all great, but
Yeah.
until you know the truth for yourself,
Right.
doesn't make a difference.
So the sentence is, I am. And start it there. Ram Dass would call all of those things his idiosyncrasies, all his idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, that's not who you
Children.
are.
Yeah, not who you are.
And you still might have them, right? But at the level of the personality, there's no perfection.
Right.
So no matter how much therapy you do or how much healing you do, you're never going to become this perfect, person. This
Yeah.
just never has any quirks. It's like we're in a human body. There's going to be stuff. But, when I was in India, I spent time with this guru. I'll never forget. I was 20, 21 years old, 20 years old. And he says to me, Kute, it's thick Indian accent. If you really want to change yourself, you better hurry up and do it now. Because whenever you get enlightened, you won't give a shit. Because because you'll know that all the stuff on the surface of your personality is not really who you are. And that's the true freedom that opens up as you reconnect with your true self.
Right. You surrender and you accept imperfection and non-resistance to it. Yes. And surrender. And yes. that's it's a perfect segue to you've written 2 books that I've read, You.Are.The.One and The Magic of Surrender. And I've already referenced many things in some of the chapters here. But both of them are about practical wisdom, in modern times and then some, really, Kute. Mm-hmm. And, your latest, The Magic of Surrender, is all about the courage of letting go. Yes. And surrendering, to me, it's about trust, isn't it? Can you talk about what that means and how we start that process? And you mentioned
I will say in a nutshell, because that I could talk for hours.
I know. Well, he written a book about it, so you guys, it's called The Magic of Surrender.
What I would say is, I think we have so many misconceptions. In terms of what surrender means and surrender is.
Yeah.
And we think surrender is weak, surrender is passive, surrender is giving up, surrender is waving the white flag. But really, we think that if we surrender, we won't manifest our goals and our dreams and desires. But I'm actually saying, no, if you understand the real meaning of surrender, what if you didn't get less, but you got more? And maybe not what you expected or what you even wanted or thought you wanted, but what if it was better than that? What if it was beyond that? Because we look at the best things in our lives that happened. We didn't plan it. It just happened in the process of living. Meeting my wife, having my son, moving to Houston, going here, all of these things, they just happened, And so I think if we can, so surrender is a letting go of control, or shall we say a letting go of the illusion that we're even in control in the first place, right? That's it, because it's an illusion. We think we're in control, but what if your grandparents didn't? What if my dad didn't leave Ghana? I'd still be in Ghana, and my whole life would be different. And so, What if your great grandparents moved somewhere else, to Brazil, to Chile? It'd be a different life. Yeah. And so, surrender is letting go of control. Surrender is letting go of the idea of who you think you should be. Surrender is letting go of the idea of the life you think you should be living. It's about taking the limitations off of life, so that you can allow life to lead you, allow life to guide you. And I think that's really when the magic happens. And when you look at the truly great ones, a Jesus, a Buddha, a Bruce Lee, a Mother Teresa, a Martin Luther King, at some point, they all surrendered. Yeah. At some point, they all let go. And in that letting go, they got to the point where they transcended themselves, and life began to move through them, and life began to use them. And I think that's when the miracles happen. That's when the magic happens. That's when grace flows, The old paradigm is all about the ego. Yeah. What do I want? What do I want? Yeah, you might manifest some good things, but it will never be truly great. You might manifest only to realize that when you attain it, it's not what you really wanted, because if you're not in touch with who you really are, how do you know what you really, really want? And that's why many times we attain and then we're left empty-handed.
Right.
I
And
think
how that manifests is
yeah,
alcohol, bad
sure.
relationships,
Yeah. The
staying in
real question
unhappy.
I would say to leave people with is not what do I want, but it is what is it that is seeking to manifest through me? What is it that is seeking to express through me? And if you can open yourself to feel that question and allow the deeper intelligence, the deeper impulse of your soul to move through you and guide you and emerge through you, then you can listen deeply. So be still, create time in stillness, listen, acknowledge, and then act. But when you feel the deeper impulse, what is life seeking to manifest through me? What is God seeking to do through me? What is my soul seeking to express? And you can feel that. Then you can align with that. And then you can align your ego and your personality and your marketing and your, money to support what is true. But now you are going in the direction of what is real. When you feel that, go and commit fully, take action without attachment. And that is the other element of surrender, to go full involvement, give everything without attachment. And that, I would say, is where the real surrender is. Then you're available and open to life showing you, versus like you trying to limit life. Many times we think we know what we want. It's like, I want a peanut. I want a peanut. And we think the peanut is everything. From an ego's perspective, we're sure like, no, this little peanut is everything I want, not realizing that life is trying to give you a peanut farm, a
Right.
peanut factory. It's bigger than you think. And that's what surrender is. It's not a passive thing, it's an active process of
Right.
surrendering and letting go and being open to life. So that's what I would say.
And you mentioned when you are surrendering, when you are in meditation, if it comes to you, I'm unhappy in my job. That doesn't mean you go and quit your job the next day. That's the first step.
Yes, it means you acknowledge it. You acknowledge it. You tell the truth. You feel it. You surrender to that, and it might mean, rather than being in denial, you start working at your job, but working towards every day a plan towards where you really want to go.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what it entails.
You have seminars and you have all kinds of things that you're working on, and I want to make sure we'll leave some. I want to leave someone with something, but tell them where they can find you and tell them where they can tap into.
Yeah,
amazing things that I have been tapping into.
Thank you for your energy of this podcast. Let's do it again. Let's do a part 2 anytime.
Yes,
I think we could probably talk for hours, to be
for
honest,
sure.
because you're great at pulling out so many dimensions of a conversation. Yeah, if people feel inspired by the conversation, number one, get the book, The Magic of Surrender. It's all there, and you are the one. My podcast, Soul Talk, check it out, 400 episodes. I would say there's so many events that I do and I've done. For the last years, I've done these very intensive events in Bali,
Yeah,
around the world, India, weekend seminars. My events are experiential, transformative, no matter what the topic. So I'd invite you to plug in. You can go to www.kuteblackson.com, Kute Blackson.com, enter your name and your email. You'll receive a free 3-part video training series. And then you'll also receive regular updates about my events and seminars. There's, in 2025, we're launching some new stuff, new seminars. We also have a free, shall we say, like online course that we're giving away,
amazing.
all about gratitude to accelerate your manifestation. We have another special manifestation online course that we're launching. That I'm sure we'll put this in the show notes. But there's so many ways we can plug in. Instagram, Kute Blackson, but I'm here to serve however I can.
Well, and I'm so happy. If the purpose of life is to learn and grow, everyone is your teacher. Everything is your school. And
Yes.
Thank you so much. I want to leave you guys with be open, be available, act on the guidance that comes from your intuition. I'm going to leave you with a quote that you reminded me of, and it's from Rumi. And out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there.
Nice. One of my favorite quotes.
So much for being here, for showing us all that you are and helping us tap into our greatness, because we all have it. This is Heather, Health, Harmony, and Heather with my favorite Kute Blackson, and we'll see you again next week.